Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Unfiltered Vet Discussions. My name is Kelly, and I'm being joined by Phil and David and Jenny. You can see our shining pictures on our website at unfilteredvetdiscussions.com or any of our social media and our brand new YouTube channel that is being launched. Today, our discussion is bear versus man. Now, Jenny, can you describe what bear versus man really means?
I can. First of all, I just want to caveat that I don't TikTok. I don't do a lot on social media, but I believe it's on TikTok. And the whole idea of it was it was in an urban setting and a gentleman went up to, I can't remember how many women and asked them that if they were stranded in the woods, would they rather come across a bear or an unknown man? And heavy majority picked the bear. This started a conversation within my house. I have two daughters, one of which is taking a self-defense class, a female-only self-defense class. And she actually, now that I'm thinking about it, she did sign a waiver that said that she would not share what she's learning in that self-defense class because they don't want her to share it with men so that they would know how to counteract it. My husband, God bless him, was very much like, but I would never hurt anybody. Like, he worked with all women and I would never be this way. And I said, I understand that, honey, but she's not taking this class to protect herself against bears. She's taking this class to protect herself against men as a potential threat. And he really struggled with it. But so of course, then we go around and we comment or we have this conversation within our practice. My practice is attached to my house, and we have all women except for my husband who works for us. And we had this conversation. And it was about 50-50 versus bear and men on what they would choose. But the conversation did start that, like, I personally have been assaulted by men. I have never been assaulted by a bear. And I have had them in my backyard. I live in a very rural area, and I have looked out and had bears in my backyard. But it's not about the bear versus man, right? It's the fact that in our mind, any man that we do not know is a potential threat. So it got us talking about how do we protect our female employees and team members and help them to feel safe. And years ago, we do clinic get-togethers frequently, and that we go out and we do things outside of the practice. My team asked me to do a self-defense class, and we went, and it was, and it was how to protect yourself against men, and when you leave the grocery store, don't look down at your phone. Always look up and look around because that makes you not an easy target. And yes, we learned how to, what is it? You can break a collarbone with 3 pounds of pressure, which is all well and good. But the reality of it is, if you don't practice that every day, you're not going to remember it. So how else can we, that my team really enjoyed that. They thought that was great. They liked it a lot, but it was, what else can we do? Especially with us, we're 24 hours on call. So sometimes we're here at 2 or 3 in the morning doing a C-section. We live in a very small town. We have our police station's number. We can call them. They have said, call me. We'll come and walk you to your cars. Even though we have lighted parking lots, but we're, like I said, we're in the woods. So it is a little creepy at night, especially if you can hear the coyotes howling. But it's what else, I guess, what else can we do to make sure that because we are a female predominant industry. So what can we do to make our team members feel safer?
I love the fact that you use that as a starting point for even if, not a formal staff meeting, but the interactions among the team, that became a discussion point, and that alone is increasing awareness. And it sounds like you've already done that within your team. I think how many practices have never had a personal safety conversation? Now, personally, I'm left brain, right brain. My logic side says, yes, I'll definitely take the bear myself because you know what you're going to get with a bear. It's consistent. And I'm a backcountry ranger wildfire fighter from over 30 years ago for the Forest Service. So I know my way in the woods, but I'll take the bear because you don't know what you're going to get when it's a human. But the whole concept behind it is, yeah, and safety's huge for all the reasons you just mentioned. And I don't have a sense of how many practices actually have it on the list. They're too focused on operations, on pet care, which is great, but sometimes you gotta look bigger than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say one of the things that you said, Jenny, was awareness. And when we looked at that video, one of the amazing things was looking at the comments from the men. And so not understanding that the way that I walk through the world is different than the way you walk through the world as a woman. Knowing that I never had to have a talk with my father about running, leaving the gym or running, going running in the morning and having to check, behind the bushes, and to have a plan when I go out to exercise on what to do to prevent myself from being assaulted. And I didn't have to experience that. And I think that too is, instead of saying, I'm curious why instead of judging, is being curious, why is it that so many women chose the bear? And I think, to Dave's point, we could talk about those things, but I think that's one of the first things, is understanding, what it is that, just the different experiences we had. And we talked a little bit about, I had an experience in 2020 with, I had a patient that wasn't doing well. And I thought I was treating the patient appropriately. We were busy. I was the only vet that was there. Like, we were trying to separate the veterinarians. We were really overloaded. And this assistant came up to me. It's about 24-year-old woman, came up to me, as the person, in charge there, and said, "Hey, I need you to stop what you're doing and come back here and reassess this patient." And think about, like, with her experience, if I had gone around and slammed my fist on the table, when things went wrong, or screamed out, yelled out an obscenity, when something happened, or was very aggressive with those moves, not understanding the impact that has on, the people around me. And why I would say I know that is because I used to do that, 12, 15 years ago, before I got into recovery, and not understanding, the impact that had on the team members around me, that, again, in our profession, we're majorly female, and having to honor that the behavior that I do may have a different impact because of who I am, and just honoring that. So that's the awareness part. And then two, to your point, is, what are we doing from a policy perspective? Like, are we, can we do an audit? When I go into hospitals, and do consulting, one of the things they'll do is do a mental health audit and say, do we have a policy, around civility? Do we have a mental health policy? What crisis policies? What are things that we have in place when we have a client who may or may not be aggressive, towards that? What do we empower our team members to do? And it's not that we wouldn't support that, but we may just not have that in place. And so that's, it's important to start there and say, what policies do we have in place around, violence in the workplace, incivility, and things of that type.
I like what you said, just to jump in real quick, because I'm a fan of distributed leadership models. And what are you empowering the team to do? Does everyone on the team understand that they have the right and if not even responsibility, to act, not to wait for the doctor to act, that a client's being disruptive or threatening, or it's no longer safe? Everyone has the opportunity and the responsibility to act. And so many top down, I can envision this. They're like, "Oh, we better go tell doc." And it goes the reception to the tech to the doctor, and you've just lost how many minutes? Versus somebody sees something, jumps on the phone, calls in the police or the health ambulance, whatnot, instead of waiting for somebody else to say it's okay to do so. Are you empowering the team to act? And do you have that policy or plan? I cut you off, Jenny. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say that you both talked about policies and plans. And I think people get into veterinary medicine because they want to help animals. So it's very easy for us to say, well, if this were to happen, how are we going to handle it? If this were to happen, how are we going to handle it? Nobody wants to think about what happens if one of my team members is attacked. Nobody wants to think about what happens if this client makes me feel unsafe. So I feel like that's a lot of it with safety is we're just going to ignore it and hope it doesn't happen to us. Oh, we read this article, but that happened, way over on the other side of the country or even the other side of the world. And, we're just a small clinic. That's not going to happen to us. And that mentality does not lend for a safe work environment. It doesn't lend exactly what you were talking about, David, to empower your team. I heard a story at BMX this year about a client who came in. The dog was in a horrific accident. The owner, who was an ex-military, like the guy who was telling the story is kind of a shorter vet. And he said, man was big, huge, and I don't know if he was really that big, but in his eyes, this was a very tall, big, strong man. And the dog did not make it. And the man lost his mind and literally ripped the exam table from the wall. They had no cameras in the room. They had no windows in the room. All of a sudden, it had been like a half an hour, and they're like, has anybody seen Dr. So-and-so? Well, Dr. So-and-so was stuck in the corner in a fetal position, basically, with this man losing his mind. The man was arrested and charged, but there were no policies in place. That vet left the industry. Apparently, 2 techs in that practice left the industry because they did not feel safe. So isn't it better to really put some thought into these things and ask your team? This has always been, when people ask me how I come up with ideas, I'm like, I asked my team, how
Right.
do you not feel safe? What has happened that makes you feel unsafe? What can I do to make you feel safer? Right. We have wasp spray at the front desk because it has a far-reaching trajectory or whatever, aim. So you don't have to wait for someone to get close to you to be able to protect yourself. You can use wasp spray, things like that. That came from one of my team members. So I think asking your team, maybe there's an area in your parking lot that isn't well lit. Maybe, you start implementing a thing when they take the trash out at night, 2 people go instead of just one. There are little things that we can do to help make our team feel better and more aware. And even if they say, no, I'm fine, you need to, as a practice owner, practice manager, any kind of leader, anybody on the team needs to really be looking for potential issues, because I'm one of those people that I sometimes have put myself in maybe not the safest situations because I'm like, I got this. And then in the moment, I'm like, maybe I didn't have this. And so some of your team members might be like that, and you need to come up with an idea on how to keep them safe, even though they think they're invincible, which we
But that
sometimes all
also,
think we are.
Jenny, I mean, you bring up a good point by asking,
Mhm.
right? You don't have to be the superhero yourself. But leaders then also have to listen to the ideas, even if like they don't like the response, they don't believe the response, it's still real to the person giving the response, right? Whatever that is. And so many times we get blown off, like, nah, it's not that bad, or no, you've got this, you can suck it up, just make it quick to the taking out the garbage using that. I mean, then you're not listening to the people and what they're feeling inside. So if they're feeling like they're trying to be vulnerable and share, and also you have to have a space, a safe space, like Phil, you talk about this a lot, and we do, safe space within the hospital to have those conversations. Otherwise, they just won't tell you at all. They'll just be like, yeah, no, we're fine. We're good, we're fine. And that even goes on the telephone. So like Beyond Indigo, we're a virtually based business, have been since 1997. It's okay also to fire clients, like the guy who ripped the thing off the wall. Like my whole team knows I will fire somebody hands down, not blink an eye, if they were verbally, emotionally abusive to one of my team members. And I've done that a couple of times. We had a client who would just get chronically drunk, found one of my team members' cell phones, call them at 11 o'clock at night, and it was a woman. And she didn't tell me right away. And as soon as I found out, they were done. Like, I'm like, this is unacceptable. This is not safe behavior. This is your personal time. This is your personal cell phone, et cetera, right? So I think it takes listening. It requires a safe space and also just a knowledge that's not tolerated. Like, I'm pretty sure you'd call the cops immediately, Jenny, if something was going down in your hospital and it wasn't
Yeah.
safe. And your team knows that, right? Phil,
Yeah.
same with you, right?
Yeah, and I just wanted to follow up on that. That's exactly what I was going to say, Kelly, is that we can write the policy, we can write the words down, and it's just like saying, oh, well, we have an open door policy. We have an open door policy, but as a leader, I, publicly berate you, or, I'm not supportive, in the actions. And so it's not just enough to have the policy. It's also like you said, is that in that moment, knowing that there have been, hundreds of little interactions through my time there that make me believe that those words matter, is that we can write any SOP that we want, but if we're not doing the day-to-day actions, that has integrity behind that, and create an opportunity for our employees to know, our team members to know that, yes, like I believe that I'm going to be given the benefit of the doubt, that I'm going to get help when I reach out for it, that those things matter, when we're creating these policies. So I think that is a vital part that you brought up, Kelly, is like, it's not just having that policy. It's also, have we laid down the foundation of the actions that show that we would support those, we would support that policy if that situation came up.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I have fired clients for using inappropriate language and just like threatening, and I'm like, no, I understand that you're upset, but you don't get to talk to people like that. And my team knows that. And I did feel really good when one of my receptionists was speaking at VMX, and they were talking about safety in the workplace, and they said, "Ooh, all we got to do is get Jenny." And I'm like, well, that's good. But also they know the things that they can do. They know they're not going to get in trouble. If you really feel worried, call 911. If you are really, they understand that. And usually either my husband or I are there. Dr. Robin, who's been with us for 15 years, is there. And, we've had the impaired clients come in. We've had different situations that make us all feel a little bit unsafe. I don't care if you're male or female, it still is going to we're in New Hampshire where we have I don't want to say everybody has a gun, but a lot of people have guns, and some of them really make a point of carrying it on their hips. So you see it, and that makes some people feel really uncomfortable. And, I think too, we need to take the power within ourselves to say, if that makes people uncomfortable, we have the right to say, you cannot wear a weapon. You cannot have a weapon on these premises. And if people don't want to follow that, then they're not your people. And that's okay. I think veterinarians and veterinary team members tend to be very people pleasers. They want everyone to be happy. We're all golden retrievers deep down at heart, and we just want to hug it out. And it's okay if not everybody likes you, and you have policies that, if it makes somebody uncomfortable, if you say, I don't want, no weapons are allowed on my premises, and somebody gives you a hard time, then that's not your person, and that's okay. And we need to be able to let them go. Liberate them to another practice.
Yeah.
Go.
Yep. Maybe there's a better fit for you elsewhere, but this
Yes.
is no longer it, right? Like,
And that's okay.
and
But
it's
if we don't,
it's okay
but
to
if
say
we,
that, and it's
but if
okay
we,
to say,
yeah,
this
if we
is our
don't,
space. This is who we are, and we don't have to change for you, because this is who we are as a practice. This is who we are as a business. And you get to make the choice whether you get to engage with our services or not based on this, but this is kind of who we are. So we're not here to cater to you in that sense, like change ourselves inside or out. We're here to help make your animals healthier, right? Or our business better.
I do think that it's important. It's funny when you said policies, Phil, I really am a horrible person about policies. I don't have a lot written down. And I do think it is more important to, yes, you can write it down, but it's far more important to have the culture that allows for people to feel safe, for my team members to come up to me and say, hey, I'm not comfortable with this person, or I'm not comfortable with this situation, or however it is. And like you said, you had a 20-something-year-old girl come up to you and say, I need you to do this right now. And that is that culture. That is that culture. And that's the same culture we try to have here, but it's not something that just happens. It's something you have to work on and be intentional about it. To your point about the cussing and the throwing of the hands and, even the fine, that is something that
Mhm.
it's kind of benign in our minds, but right. If you do that to me, I'm not going to come to you again.
Yeah.
I'll go talk to this other
Yeah.
person who I know will help me and not give me attitude.
Yeah, it creates a barrier.
Yeah. And I
100%.
don't think we even are aware of it all the time because we are frustrated and we are pulled in 60 different directions. And it's just being aware of how every one of your team feels and how they feel safe and what can you do to encourage that.
So to wrap it up today.
We don't hate men. Because
Don't
that's
hate
what
men.
when you read these comments though, oh, these man haters and blah, blah, and it's like it has nothing to do with that.
No,
Right.
it has nothing
Yeah.
to do with men. It has,
It's zero to do that.
Perceptions
And
of safety.
yeah,
right,
Yeah.
it is.
it's just one of those things that yeah, I guess I'll wrap it up, Kelly.
Why don't you wrap it up, Jenny?
But it's not about man versus bear. It is about listening to what
Mhm.
these women were saying and whether it's a true threat or an implied threat. If they feel it as a threat, then it is. Not saying that bears aren't threatening, they can be a threat, but it's about listening to what they're talking about and looking at the bigger message and listening to your team and looking at that big picture and how do we keep people safe. It is not about hating men or women are the best. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with working together as a team, as a community, as humanity, and
Mhm.
listening and really getting to what is the fear here and how can we alleviate that. So listen to your
Well,
team.
well said.
Well,
Thanks.
thanks, Jenny. And with that, we will wrap it up for today and we will see you next week. Thank you, everybody.